what we've just seen there in Scholar is cycles of what we call recursive feedback. So what do we mean by recursive feedback? Well, classic assessment was linear, which is I do a term's work, I do the test, and the answer's B+, which means I'm a bad person. But what do I do with that? How do I go back and relearn what I haven't learned? How useful is that B+, other than to tell me I better pull up my socks and be better in the next topic, or the next semester, or the next whatever I'm about to do next? So it's linear. You know, you do your work, you get a piece of evaluation. But what we have in what you've just seen are these cycles of recursive feedback, which are actually very small cycles, where you're getting information back all the time, which contributes to your learning. So the distinction between learning and assessment gets blurred because everything is assessment. But also what you've seen is a phenomenon that we call crowdsourcing assessment, which is that we've got a number of learners, each giving each other feedback. In fact, far more feedback than one teacher could ever realistically give. And it's all useful feedback. And giving feedback is as useful as receiving feedback. So what we have here is a kind of a cycle here that looks like this diagram. So let me draw some conclusions about this kind of environment where assessment and instruction are conflated. What we've done with Scholar is we've built an architecture where you can see there's a left side of the screen where you're doing your work, and there's a right side of the screen where you're thinking about the work that you're doing, including getting social feedback about your work. So if you like, we're going to call the left side of the screen cognition. We're going to call the right side of the screen metacognition. So on the left side, we have a learning activity where we're focusing on the representation of the specific content that we're working on. And on the right-hand side, we're going to have a kind of self-regulation of learning, which is a statement of what the project objective is, the outline of the activity you've got to do, ongoing dialogue around the processes of learning, and so on. Now, on the left, what we've got is disciplinary practice. We're doing something, which is we're talking about a sick animal, we're talking about we're doing a project on the solar system, for example, whatever that might be, and that's disciplinary practice. We're thinking about a specific topic, the facts and its arguments, and then on the right, we're doing disciplinary thinking, which we're focusing on the general conditions of thoughtful work in this discipline, and we're doing kind of epistemological reflection on the nature of thinking about the stuff on the left. On the left, we're doing empirical work. We're talking about specific content. We're applying disciplinary reasoning to that content. And on the right, we're doing theoretical work. We're doing thinking based on the general precepts of discipline and thinking about the relationship of the particular and the general all the time. On the left, we've got individual intelligence if it's a singly authored piece of work. In fact, it may be multiply authored, but let's say it's singly authored. We've got individual intelligence, which is the activity of representing knowledge. And on the right, we have collaborative intelligence, where the peers are coming in and they're giving us feedback. And there's a set of collaborations going on where the knowledge is not simply individual knowledge. On the left, we have learning, which is the topic that we're dealing with. We're learning some stuff while we're doing it. On the right, we have assessment, which is being crowdsourced in these kinds of ways. So there we've got the kind of backwards and forwards over and over and over again. So what we have here is multiple cycles where we're doing our work on the left and we're reflecting about our work on the right. So firstly, I do the draft, I look at the rubric. Then I get other people's work to look at, I review against that rubric. I get my work back, I look at the comments other people have made. I start revising my work, and then I write a self-review of the way in which I've taken on other people's feedback. So through many, many cycles, we go backwards and forwards, and in fact, we're going backwards and forwards all the time between learning and assessment. So what do we take away from this? What are the lessons? Well, remember that test we saw in Thailand at the beginning of this little video? Well, that's knowledge is individual, which it's the stuff I can keep in my head in time to look like I know what I know in the exam. Whereas here, knowledge is social, which is there's a lot of social interaction going on. And by the way, we can tell the difference between what you've done and what's social because we can see the comments you've got, we can see your self-reflections about how you've changed your work. It's all visible, it's all explicit. This is a post-cheating era because everything is social. I mean, in the old individualist environment, anything that was social was cheating. Well, now here we have the origins of of social knowledge fully documented through this process. We have assessment crowdsourced. So instead of the poor old teacher having a pile of essays to mark at the end or a pile of exams to mark at the end of a particular course, that we've got a process of collaboratively sharing that assessment burden around along the way. But also we've shifted the main focus and logic of assessment away from summative. Historically, assessment was primarily summative towards formative. And in fact, what we're going to do in a summative sense is we are just going to look at progress visualizations, which is we can see what you've learned by looking at the formative assessment that's come along all the way. So we kind of abolish summative assessment by virtue of moving all assessment into the formative space. And what we move from is we move from linear feedback to recursive feedback. In other words, instead of hand in your work, B+, many small cycles of feedback that contribute to your learning. Now, if you want to have some more thinking about this, or if you'd like to think more about this topic, this particular book here, Mary Calancis and I have given the last chapter particularly talks about assessment.